Okay, now the recording is going, so you should be very happy, Sabrina. Let me just grab a piece of paper here so I know that I won't miss anything. Of course, I can ad-lib here. I've interviewed Sabrina sometime last year. I think it was last July, if I'm not mistaken, but nobody hold me to it. And basically, Sabrina, you are welcome to start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself, but I can just start with a brief intro here. Sabrina has been a Facebook friend of mine close to 3 years. She is, are you still currently a DJ, or are you between disc jockey jobs? But I know for sure you are not currently disc jockeying out in Canada somewhere. You are purely a musician at these days, right? Okay, and a fine one at that. And Sabrina is a guitarist, a wonderful singer, a sensational publicity agent here, and I need her for my piano. And most of all, a friend. But Sabrina, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and exactly what you're doing these days musically?
Well, you pretty much said a bit of it, that I do play guitar, and I also write my own songs, and I have recently got on mainstream radio, so I wanted to talk a bit about how that happened and the struggles to get on it too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things now about many indie musicians is being self-produced, literally going door to door and getting their songs played, and not necessarily on mainstream radio. On internet, like my station, we've been playing Sabrina since day one, since at least the day she contacted me. And we have her often on our Girls Night Out show, at least musically, maybe not as a guest, but her music appears there often. And that usually runs Sunday nights from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on our Friendly Smile Frenzy Network station, which is an iRadio USA affiliate. You can find us at iRadioUSA.com and look for the affiliate stations, and you'll see the picture of me and my lovely wife, Joyce, there, and you just click on the button and it goes to the station player. And a special edition tonight, which will be after this interview, sometime around 9 Eastern, and I say Eastern even though I'm in a central time zone because Sabrina's out in, you're in Ontario, right? So,
Ontario, yeah.
Okay, which is an Eastern time zone. And we made sure that my host is actually in Long Island, New York. So everything is Eastern time. So 9 Eastern, sometime approximately after this interview will be done, because it normally runs right before this interview tonight. It should have, and I say would have, should have, run at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, and Sabrina would have sort of segued into this interview, but we had to salvage things due to technical difficulties, but we convinced our wonderful host to run the show later tonight. So I hope you tune in then, and now we'll hand things over back to Sabrina. And Sabrina, why don't you just give everybody a little background about yourself, how you grew up, what made you become a musician, and so on.
Oh, how I grew up. Well, I'm from Canada, and Ottawa, Ontario, Canada.
Oh,
and
Canada.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So how did I get into music? That's a question I'm still trying to figure out, because I think I was just born into it. Soon as I was born, I was humming tunes. Then I started writing stories, then poetry, then I started learning piano, then I won my first singing competition, then I grabbed the guitar. So I think as soon as I was born, I was in it. I think as if I was put into it, which is good because I really enjoy music. I'm very passionate for it. So yeah, it's great.
Okay, and one thing that I will ask though is, you're touring Canada, but obviously not now during the pandemic. What has been one of your most interesting shows that you put on? Any unique things happen? Not necessarily technical difficulties or anything. A surprised guest or two, maybe a family member or somebody who showed up that hopefully no hecklers. Absolutely none. I would never do that. Never. I would even heckle myself first before I'd heckle anyone.
Well, all I can remember is a funny situation that happened at a show where there was a drunk guy. and he was dancing. That's all I can remember that was funny. But yeah, that's about it.
Okay, well, that's good. I've been at a couple strange shows myself. I've been, one time I was at, I think it was the first year that they officially called the new Comiskey Park US Solar Field. This is in Chicago. And there was a Bruce Springsteen concert. And while he was doing the show, the lights went out in the entire
Okay.
stadium for about 5 minutes. And luckily they had their own lighting system, but they flashed it on the audience. And here I am
Yeah.
in the upper deck. And I don't know if Joan
Yeah.
can attest to this. Joan, I know you've been at tons of Bulls games, that much I know, but over the years. But
Yeah.
you've been to
Most.
Comiskey Park.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway.
No, but most places have backup systems for lights and stuff in case it goes out.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to Sabrina here. And Sabrina, growing up, who were some of your musical influences and who are you listening to now?
Okay, growing up, I was listening to a lot of Michelle Branch when I first started, and Simple Plan and Evanescence. And then as I started to figure out my genre of music was Green Day, then Bon Jovi, then Billy Idol. But I'm listening to now, I wouldn't call this band my influence, but I really love them. If you have heard of Lucas Graham, he's from Denver, and he's very soulful. He's so good. He's like his song 7 Years. It was his single, and yeah, I just love his voice. Love his voice.
Wow, that's good. Now, I'm going to play a little bit of Dan Rather here because I love watching his the big interview on Access TV here in the States. He tends to interview, unlike political figures and such when he was on CBS News, a lot of musicians. So therefore, in a Dan Rather mannerism here, I'm going to just run some bands by you, try and get your reaction here, Sabrina. Okay. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. Okay,
Yes.
I can see that. Okay. Billy Idol.
I just mentioned my influence, yeah. And I've seen him live too, definitely.
I have not, I actually have only seen him live in a partial way. Back in 96, 97, The Who did a Quadrophenia performance, and he played the bellboy in a live performance. So, and I think also Gary Glitter was in that too, but I think he played the punk and Godfather, if you ever seen Quadrophenia. But it was very good who performed the rock opera, but they were special guest stars in the performance. So it was very cool. Okay, next, Bon Jovi.
Yeah, I've seen him live too. Oh, I love Bon Jovi.
Right, okay. And I got one more for you, and the screen may explode here. I think she knows what's coming next. I think I can see it. Okay. Green Day.
Yeah, look behind me, guys.
Yeah, it's like I professionally stalked her here. I mean, I checked her bio and everything. You know, hey. Okay, but no, but Sabrina and I have had many a conversation about the band Green Day, all of it good. But I said I saw Green Day a few years back with, I think St. Vincent opened for them back in 2015, somewhere around the Uno tour. You can attest. I think it was about 2015.
Oh, yes, the Uno tour, right, right.
Yeah, very good. Okay, and I know Joan has also been to her share of concerts, but that's again for another show, because Joan is a very big music fan. I think she can attest to that. I don't know recently where anybody's been to any concert, but I know that I go to a lot of these live streams. Many of my friends are doing them now, Lisa Loeb and various others,
right,
and such, and it's very cool. So maybe before the pandemic's over, maybe you'll do a couple live things or stuff where everybody can have a sing-along, but that's for another time. Anyway, so next thing that I want to ask you is, you've been a DJ for a while, even though you're not currently doing that. What was that like for you?
No, honestly, I prefer being on the stage.
That's okay.
Like I didn't mind talking and about the songs and stuff, but it felt weird because I'm so used to people seeing me when I'm talking. And also I started singing the songs while I was playing them. So I'm like, this is, I just ended up singing instead of actually playing the song.
Yeah. Okay, you know, that's
So
the thing now, that a lot of the singers and everything don't have to memorize all their lyrics like they once did. Everybody's got the little teleprompter on the ground
I
and
I
such.
noticed
I
that,
know
yeah, but
it's a
I
bad
like to
giveaway sometimes,
memorize.
but
Yeah.
I was at a show back in the 80s, long before these teleprompters, where I was at a Joe Jackson show, and one of his most popular songs, he actually forgot the words. He just went like this: "I have to start over. I have to start over." And I just couldn't, you know, you think everybody's picture perfect, and I know Joan is picture perfect when she has her radio show. I see her a little snark there a little bit. She's like, never, you know, but she knows that I'm there almost every day just to give her cookies and coffee, so to speak. It's emoji cookies and coffee, but at least that way I know she knows that I'm there and everything. And when I can listen on my way home from my other day job supporting IT, she knows I'm a listener there, a very loyal listener, and I love her show, and I think it's fantastic. And I think maybe you probably couldn't imagine that a couple of years ago, Joan, where maybe you were just doing news updates on occasion on various radio stations across Chicago, when you yourself went from doing the evening and weekend news to a talk show host. But thankfully, through the art of Facebook Live, you are able to be seen by all of us all every day almost. So much. Okay. And you can see in the background, she's got the station there. It's through the pandemic. You're working out of your house there, right? Okay. But our guest here is Sabrina for now. So let me get back to Sabrina. What was it like for you growing up in Canada?
Cold.
Oh, it's cold. It's cold here, especially when winter lasts to maybe early July and starts in November. And I see Joan's probably thinking that's probably the case, except for today we hit close to 90
But
degrees.
it's really beautiful
Yeah.
where I am in. I am in the capital of
Oh,
Canada. Yeah.
okay. Okay. So with social media, what have you found most interesting about building your fan base?
I have to pick one of the accounts.
Well, not necessarily. I'm not going at it like here, whether it's a Twitter versus Facebook versus Instagram, but what have you found most comfortable about associating with fans where maybe 10 years ago or so, before social media was really active, now we have meet and greets when we're not in a pandemic mode, where artists will come. Some, the kindness of their heart, will sign for free. Others will have a separate fee and sign autographs galore, but you know, it's a separate package. But how have you used the social media to build your fan base?
I communicate and update frequently. I try to talk to everybody that follows me to thank them, and I try to do my best to be able to follow them back. And I try to show the same support towards them that they're giving me.
That is a very good way to do this. And I'm sure your fans appreciate that. Are your other fans as excited about your music as I am? Because you know, for me, that
I hope so.
I sure hope so. But have you had any strange fan requests, let's say for autographs or other things that were unusual? So, because I used to have a friend, unfortunately he's no longer in this world, but one of the things he always used to tell me was, even if they were not athletes, he would have a musician or a TV star sign baseball. And I always wondered, like why would you do that? They're not athletes and such. And he goes, you would see the strangest things, because when you have somebody sign something unique, obviously we're not Tom Jones here and getting women throwing things at him, but to give something unusual maybe gives it more of a sense of importance. And I don't know if you would agree, because I have a funny story that my friend Jim Messina, you may have heard of him from Luggins and Messina from the 70s. I was at one of his live shows, and my wife was out of town, but she had written a book, and she wanted me to give him a bookmark of the book you know, just for him, and then eventually would give him a copy of the book. And when I handed him the book, he was such in signing mode, he signed his autograph on my wife's bookmark and handed it back to me for my wife. So that type of thing to me is like, well, I may forget the concert and what played years from now, but that experience I won't forget.
Well, you always remember that, yeah.
So I would say that's one for the books. And I think also one time when I went out to see the Rolling Stones back in '89, which was one of their many farewell tours then, it was a ride up to Alpine Valley. It took like maybe 2 hours from where I lived to get to a mile away from Alpine Valley, and then another mile to get in the parking lot. I mean, another hour to get in the parking lot, literally, as people were like abandoning their cars and leaving themselves, whether we had permission or not. So it was quite a ordeal, and for another time. But in the meantime, what are you doing to deal with the pandemic these days, cooped up at home, and how restricted is it where you're at compared to Chicago? Up until maybe 2 weeks or so ago was very highly restricted, and I'm sure Joan can agree with that. The fact that you're home all these hours instead of out on the streets of Chicago and having to come back from downtown. The studio is downtown, right, Joan? Or such. Joan, yeah.
On Milwaukee Avenue.
Oh, Milwaukee Avenue.
It's about 5400 north of Milwaukee.
Oh, reason that's not too far from. Is it Jefferson Park or is that Edison Park?
Jefferson Park, I think.
Jefferson Park, yeah. I used to take the train when I worked downtown, the Blue Line, and so I pretty much seen everything there going that way. And actually, it's just quite an ordeal. The city is amazing, especially when everyone is behaving themselves and not armed and dangerous, as you can attest to. But luckily, people have realized now that it's important, yes, to protest where needed and get your point across, but in a nice, peaceful way is really the way to go. But again, we're not here for politics. Joan's show is an excellent show if you want to hear about politics and views and so forth. And we'd like to get back to Sabrina here because, after all, Sabrina has been so kind to join us here.
So what I've been doing is keeping myself very busy, writing some songs, doing lots of interviews, and just actually, the malls have opened up here. The businesses are open. Everything's pretty much open here. But am I going to the mall right now? No, not yet. I am not running into the mall just yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm still trying to be a bit careful. I don't think it's time for me to go into a mall.
I am thankful that my wife was actually able to arrange for a group that they will do personal shopping for her and such, because she is homebound for the last 3 months. She does not drive, and she has some reason to be home that no, she does not have COVID. Believe me, everybody, she's safe, and I'm safe, thank goodness. And I work in a field where, while I'm not a true essential worker, I support those that do essential work. I support nursing homes in my PC day life, and therefore we are essential. So I have been in the office just with mask and gloves every day, business as usual, doing phone support and keeping things running in many ways. So to be home with everybody now, my routine, other than not going to concerts, not going to any movies, and not doing severe shopping other than emergency prescription or something like that, has been most of my life. And I believe me, I got named administrators in some of these fan groups, and I think I know as much as the Bengals know about the Bengals these days. So yeah. So I'd like to be able to open now for some questions and see if you like to unmute or ask, or you can go to the chat window. Control A will get you unmuted, but I ask that everybody respect each person, let them speak one at a time. So anybody who would like to ask Sabrina a question at this time, please do an Alt A if you're muted, or click on the mute button of your voice and feel free to ask away, but please don't ask her of anything that she would not wish to ask, such as who you're dating or anything like that right now. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's see if I can unmute Joan here. Yeah, Joan, I think you just have to do an Alt-A. Alt-A on your keyboard. I think we'll also unmute you. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can.
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Ah,
Yes.
so, where do you like to play live? What kind of atmosphere do you like to play for?
Festivals.
Ah,
I love festivals because you're looking at one person, but actually you're looking at everybody. I just love a full crowd. And I love to hear them cheer and sing along, and because they do sing along if they know the cover song I'm singing. So
That's great. So one of the things that we're going to be missing this summer in Chicago is the Taste of Chicago and various fest, Pitchfork, Lollapalooza, which has basically been here almost, I think, since 1991. And I think Paul McCartney even played Lollapalooza a couple years ago.
mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I think.
Yeah. So I don't even know who was booked for this year because it was an immediate cancel. And even 90 miles north, Summerfest from Milwaukee, which has been, I think, celebrated last year's 50th year. They originally, once they had the notification of the pandemic, tried to reschedule for 3 weekends in September, but even that they scratched and moved everything to 2021, as most summer venues have. So I think the most I've seen any show still scheduled now are maybe September onward, and that's in smaller venues. But I don't know if they will even be able to possibly carry on with those shows to be able to social distance properly with at least what phase 3 is here in Chicago. I don't know, Joan,
Exactly.
if you've thought about that. It's like one of the places that I've gone to in recent years a lot has been both City Winery in North Loop or something, West Loop, and in Evanston, a nice quaint spot called Space. So, and
yeah,
I think you're somewhere up north, right, Joan? Somewhere north side.
I've been to both of those places. I really like Space, and I really love City Winery. I like them because you go someplace and it's a nice sized crowd, but it's small enough that there's really not a bad seat in the house.
True. And there's the stars often sign and meet the fans afterwards, but I don't know how that will be going forward, because I was talking to my wife the other day about this, and I said, you may have seen the last of the meet and greets, because while a lot of the artists may be friendly to sign, they may pre-sign ahead and just leave them at the stands, and none of these taking the pictures with everybody and selfies and such, but they may just sign a bunch of autograph shots available for the audience afterward. And I think one of the things that I saw Jim Messina doing when he was elsewhere before the show stopped entirely was instead he had a Q&A session where he normally had a meet and greet, where he stood on the stage afterward on a bar stool and took questions from the audience and so forth. So that may be the musical wave of the future in the small venues, at least for the foreseeable future. So let me see what else we like to ask Sabrina here for a minute, because normally I'm usually on the under end of these things. I've recently been on with the 4 Esoterics. They usually are on like Tuesdays and Fridays about 2 p.m. So that's why sometimes I'm a little bit late getting to your show of late, Joan, because they have me on with them as I'm like a panelist. I think I'm their publicity agent because I tweeted once, you know. I hope that if they're watching now, they love me, so it's okay. And they've had various people on, and it's their whole aim of this show that they're on is to avoid politics at all costs. And one of the things that the last show was like New York City in the 1980s, and they spoke of Son and Sam, even though he was really in the late 70s, and Club 54, which was sort of on its way out then, and so forth. So if you get a chance, you might catch me before I jump over to Joan's wonderful show to be with them tomorrow sometime. It's 2 p.m. Central Time, so that'd be 3 Eastern. And it's usually a Zoom. You can check them out on Twitter, and you'll find their And usually some of my tweets might have a retweet with them mentioned for esoterics, number 4. Now, Joan, you're excused from that because by all means, you have to give a full dedication to your show, but you can see some of the repeats there on their YouTube channel. And usually I'm a black square because I'm at work and not a mic and a webcam, but I'm on the chat or something. But once in a while they do a later show and I'm home and I'm like I am now, waving and, well, very esoteric. Okay, back to Sabrina here, because I do not want to take too much away. I mean, I love talking to people, especially Joan here and everything. I think this is the first time we've actually got to speak in person other than by email or chat or such, or giving you a nice little emoji. And I appreciate your coming on. And I can really say with all truthfulness now that Joan is indeed a friend of mine, and especially because I don't owe her any money or anything. That's great, you know. And I'd like to get to have everybody else now who's on, if you don't mind, say hello and introduce yourself and say how you either know me or Sabrina, or you're just a fan tuning in for the first time. So again, if one at a time, if you would do an Alt-A, anybody who may want to speak that has their mic currently muted, that would be awfully nice for you to go ahead. Anybody who would like to take the reins, please go ahead now.
I like to speak. My name is Karan, and hello, Phil, and everyone.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I'm calling from DC, and I'm best friends with Sabrina here. Been knowing her for quite a while, and
MySpace days, man. MySpace days.
Yeah,
I had to throw that in there. That's how long.
That's
So
great.
it's
That's
really good.
far west Canada, right? That's British Columbia, right? You said BC, right? Not DC.
Oh,
No,
I'm
Washington.
Washington,
Oh,
DC.
Washington, DC. Okay, now I need to get my ears checked. I know it's too much of the, but anyway, but DC. So we're the home of Bruce Springsteen's wonderful band member and former Chicagoan longtime Niels Lofgren. I'm sure Joan is probably maybe more familiar with the Niels Lofgren name than maybe some of the other people here, but he has been a longtime member of the E Street Band, at least since 1984. And he was most famous, at least for, he used to play guitar when he'd go acoustic with shows. He, I guess this is obviously in his much younger days, with little one of those little mini trampolines, and he would do flips, hopefully not with a guitar in his hand, but that was what he was noticed for. And obviously more people now know him as part of the E Street Band. And he occasionally does come back through Chicago. And I think one of the places he's played, Joan, has been City Winery. But nobody's really played there in a few months, but yeah. So, and also another one of Bruce's band members, Max Weinberg, often visits City Winery or Space in Evanston. And the nice thing about when he comes by is he calls it Max Weinberg's jukebox, where literally his whole set is made out of audience requests. And maybe some of you from the States might remember that he was the band leader when Conan O'Brien was back on NBC. He didn't follow Conan to TBS.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's Max.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we love Max in this household. Max is, you know, again, if those of you who know me, big Springsteen fan, Hall & Oates, Doobie Brothers, and the Kinks. Now wait a second, Joan, you're not going to believe this. I think I saw you one time at a Kinks concert many years ago.
I've never been to a Kinks concert.
Really? Oh.
Sadly.
Well, somebody who incredibly looked like you at the time. And,
well, I hope she was younger and prettier and thinner.
well, it may have been. I think this might have been like in the 80s, maybe 1984 or so, because supposedly that's where I met my wife, even though I didn't actually go out on a date with her until about 4 years later, because she believes that I was standing right next to her and didn't even know, because she was another mutual friend of ours. And I wasn't barely introduced because I was with someone else at the time. That's okay, because that was my only date with this other person. And it was, so I thought maybe, but if you've never been to the Kinks, Joan, if they have a reunion, maybe that's the show maybe to see you at. So anyway, okay. But in the meantime, if anybody else would like to ask Sabrina a question, please go right ahead.
Kieran didn't ask her question.
Oh,
Um,
wait a minute.
question was, I never got to ask you, if you weren't gonna do music, what type of job would you have?
Okay, I can tear up the rest of the sheet here. That was, I was just-
I would have probably been a detective because I love solving crime. I love watching those crime beat shows and the cop shows and the stuff like that. And I just love
Me too.
watching it on YouTube. And as they're solving it, I try to solve it. And sometimes I'm even like as close as them, you know, like my mind goes right into it. But hey, maybe I could do both.
Yeah, I remember, was it Robert Stack had that show back in the 90s, Unsolved Mysteries? And yeah, that's what I think. So maybe we could see one day Sabrina in Canada when your musical career is on pause, reviving Unsolved Mysteries, maybe.
On a little, I'm just resting while I'm writing, but I'm actually solving a crime.
That's great.
That'd be quite unique.
Okay, next question for our wonderful guest, Sabrina Fallahon.
I saw Jordan.
That's me. Hi.
Hey, hi. You want to introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from, and go ahead and ask Sabrina the question.
My name is Jordan, aka J-Man, or just DJ J-Man. I'm a radio host from Mesa, Arizona, and I have known Sabrina for a couple of years now. She sent her music to my station to be submitted to play, so I've known her since the radio. But my question, since you said DJing, which I didn't know that at all about you.
It's just in Canada, but yes.
I don't know how you let that slip out, because I didn't know nothing about DJing. But
I don't normally tell people that.
So my question is,
you were wonderful.
How was your DJing experience?
You were wonderful, Sabrina.
That's my question.
Fine. You know, maybe, like I said, maybe one time we'll have you guest DJ, even though you're going to make a little bit of a guest appearance on the Night Night show afterward. But I have to say that is a podcast that we.
I don't mind doing.
So I'm not as lively as I am here, but you know.
I don't mind guesting stuff. Okay. But how was my experience DJing?
Yeah.
Like I said earlier. When I was DJing and I was playing the songs, instead of letting the people hear the songs, I was singing with the songs.
The people didn't hear the songs.
But I enjoyed it for a while, but then I felt like I rather co-host with someone that has a station and join in, do it that way, because I don't have the time to sit down and do that. Well, I like to write and perform and do stuff.
Okay. What I was going to say is that a lot of the morning zoo, as they call it, format, I don't know if they still call it morning zoo, is just a set of craziness, because I think it's also with sporting events now, when you need that third person in there, sometimes you get lost in the shuffle. Now I can say Joan does an excellent job hosting solo, but I know there's been times back in the was it maybe early 2000 when you were filling in the morning news sometime at XRT, where you joined Lynn Bramer, and you know that's quite an experience being on Lynn's show. And
it is.
Now it's a little bit harder for me to catch Lynn because he's moved to middays. I guess middays is what radio retirement is all about, where they just won't let you leave like Godfather 3. You know, it's like you're either in the morning or the afternoon, or in my case, I'm recorded both, but different shows. So it's like anytime we lose a DJ, guess what? I've got another shift to pretend I have. So, so anyways, it's like, I think now my regular show just on the regular station will be after the girls' night out, but it will just be recorded because after all, I'd never sleep. You know, it's like 4 hours, right? I'm sure Joan, you can attest to this. Even though you're not doing mornings anymore, your day just like from start to finish, sunrise to beyond, even though you're pretty much done with the radio show at 5 p.m., but with all the social media and everything like that, probably, I'm sure you're relieved in some ways to be home, that you start dinner at a somewhat normal hour. I think I've seen you sometimes, was it Instagram or something where you were making dinner or something, or was that?
Yeah, I gave up on that. I don't.
It's amazing. I love it on Instagram.
Cooking
I
show.
have like 5 posts, and they've been just basically Facebook shares, and all of a sudden all these followers. And like this is the one thing, and I'm sure Joan, as you've seen, is that all of a sudden, no offense to third world countries, but I have a little bit of strangeness in my heart when I see someone from Uganda or Nigeria suddenly follow me or friend me on Facebook when they do not speak English. And it's
Exactly.
like, okay, I try, and I'm very open-minded, as Joan may know here, in that sense that I have friends of every denomination everywhere, not to sound like somebody who sort of claims that, but as you can see that my friends list is very vast and near 4,000. It's not that, but basically, if I see someone from a foreign country, at least if they have like interest, be welcome, everything that, as long as you don't spam me, you're welcome on my page.
Right.
It's good for everybody. It's good for world relations too, because we really have to stop everybody with all this hate and everything. Everybody needs to just have a better understanding of everyone. We all have our own views and everything.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not going to get very political here. That's not the purpose of this here, but just to say, I'm sure everybody who at least is here right now knows that. And it's just, you know, the world's going to have problems, and that's not going to go away, but we can sort of ease the problems if we just have a little bit better understanding of what everybody's about, and conduct ourselves in a very nice, and I stress nice, manner where everybody behaves, right? You know, who was the one that would be always, oh, behave, right? Was that, I'm trying to think of it, I can't think of it now, but.
I think, oh yeah, Austin Powers.
Austin Powers, yeah, right.
Yeah, Austin Powers.
Okay, so, but it's funny.
Oh, behave.
Austin Powers, because with the Bengals group that I am an administrator for, Bengals fan page, is one of my other friends said, oh, you know about the Bengals, and suddenly now I sure do, until my head is reeking out of it. But Susanna Hoffs of the Bengals, is her husband Jay was the director of the first Austin Powers film, and she even did a cameo in the band at the closing credits when Austin Powers sings BBC. So you can see that on YouTube. I think is her pseudonym was not Susanna Hoffs, that was Jillian Shagalot. So, or Jillian Shagwell, I forgot. But again, you know, so let's give Sabrina a wonderful thank you so far. We're still on for another few minutes or so before the show. And I noticed, Joan, obviously this is probably the first time you're meeting Sabrina here. So usually you wouldn't have your insightful journalistic skills ready to interview, because I know you've done an excellent job interviewing musicians such as Jim Peterick of Survivor and Ides of March back when. So you know I listened to your show. So no question. So. Sometimes I've even helped and jumped in with, oh yeah, Jim's got a new song out here, play this. But then Joan's ready to wring my neck or something. It's like when I did that. But Joan, as you can attest to now, I made every effort possible to make sure that you got on this time, as opposed to those rude trollers that kept you away on Friday evening. So.
No problem.
And one of these days, Joan, I don't know with your restrictions in the station, so you may not be able to do it now, but I'd love a station ID from you. And I will literally have to pretend and hold my phone up so we can get one, but it's okay.
I tried to do one, and I couldn't get the technology to work, but I'll try again.
Right, okay. So that's okay. You'll just say, I'm not Diane Sawyer, but I play her on TV, right? But, or because Joan and I have a mutual friend for a long time, and this may be how we possibly connected, Joan, is I think every year for the last so many years, I remind you when Deborah Norville's birthday is. And if most of you don't know Deborah Norville, she is wonderful. She used to be here in Chicago for many years. She has been, I think for 30 years now, the host of the weekday version of Inside Edition, which is syndicated, so you can find it. I don't know if it's in Canada, but certainly in the States. here on,
Yeah.
it's ABC7 here in Chicago at 3 p.m. So again, somebody interrupting Joan's wonderful show, because Joan's on from 2 to 5. But Deborah has been a friend of mine for a long time, and I also remind Deborah when your birthday. So don't think Deborah has such an elephant's memory. I'm always like the day before, Deborah, it's Joan's birthday, and various other friends that Joan and I share, even though I guess out of all of them, probably Deborah is the closest, but Linda, you, I don't know, Joan, do you know Kate Sullivan, who used to be on CBS 2? Yeah, she does To Dine For. That's also an excellent show, interview on PBS. So you can catch that. If you don't have PBS in Canada, you can probably do pbs.org and find her wonderful show. Gee, I'm getting these free plugs and none of the cash is going in ka-ching. But Joan, you know I publicize your show all the time to my friends and all that stuff. And believe me, my conservative friends have a little harder time watching, but that's okay. Joan knows why, but progressive is progressive. But even so, you know, sometimes to nudge our conservative friends, you have to sort of say, okay, I'm a moderate Republican. I know people there are just like ready to cut me off on both ends, just, you know, but anyway. But don't worry, our president has not earned any respect from almost anyone. Okay, right. The thing is, because, you know, they'll make me behind a firing squad or something. But anyways, back to Sabrina here. I'm just looking at my watch, not because I'm stalling here for the next so minutes. Is Joan, you know, here when you have to go in and out of commercial breaks, you know, like you know what this means. Okay, and also. Right, okay, so as I'm sure you can attest to that also, Sabrina, we have our signals. It's like, okay, you take an audio production class and it lives with you forever, because only maybe a handful know that my radio start was basically almost 10 years ago, a one-timer on WDRV. I'm the famous first Sunday night star that they had running for about 5 years. And only reason why I got to be the first one was because Traffic's Dave Mason, who at that time was living in Chicago, he may still be living in Chicago, couldn't do it, otherwise he would have beat me out. So I owe my whole radio career basically to Dave Mason of Traffic. So anyhow, let's get back to Sabrina. Sabrina, how would you like to tell your fans in brief how they can really better this world by playing your music and so forth? What do you think we as people here, I'm sorry if I'm stepping on your toes here, Joan, but how we can better use social media to make the world a better place? I know this is a music question, but hey, I got a forum here. I might as well take it.
Honestly, that's not a one like that. This is my that's not an easy question, because everybody.
Okay, I got questions now to grill people all the time now. Okay.
Because everybody uses social media differently than each other. So the way somebody else might use it might help them in that way, but not me. So I have and I'm still learning as I'm using it. So that's a tough question.
Yeah, I think also probably I'm always learning here, because my show is basically, even though I've done over 418 of them, they're evolving, because I didn't think I even was able to do Facebook Live to maybe 2016 or 17. So I'm always sharing it with Twitter and tweets. I'm the Twitter. Tweets and with hashtags. I might be the king of the hashtags. I think the other day I hit 60,000 tweets, and I've been on Twitter since I think 2009, and I have probably more tweets than many a celebrity. And I am so honored by everybody that follows me there. And one of the things I always like about Twitter over some of the other things is that when somebody follows you, unlike Facebook, where now they have that follow option, but you have to basically friend somebody. If, let's say, someone in the media or such follows me and I haven't followed them yet, it's more like an honor, because like they know I'm here. Or usually it's probably one of their bots or something that has caught their eye, because I, to this day, I think, I don't know why I'm followed by actor David Caruso, even though I think it's a great honor to be followed by him, but I think probably because of Ava LaRue, who was his co-star in CSI Miami, because I had followed her for a long time. So maybe one of my tweets, he caught that and he liked the tweet and tweeted and so forth. But Joan is, like I said, was one of my first Facebook friends, and I always appreciate everything that she does, and I appreciate what Sabrina does, and it's very nice to also meet all of you here, and we're gonna wrap things up in a couple minutes. But Joan, if you'd like to add anything from your experiencing interviewing celebs or musicians or politicians, what would you say these type of Zoom conferences bring to the table?
Well, I love these kinds of things because it's a way to experience situations. I mean, there are so many things that you'd like to do, but you don't have the time, or you're too tired, and this sort of brings everything to you. And as far as you, Sabrina, whenever I've been interviewing people, especially like if you're interviewing somebody who's done a lot of interviews, sometimes I just look at somebody and say, what's the one thing nobody's ever asked you that you would like people to know about you?
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, there's your Dan Rather, Joan, because that's a very Dan Rather-like question. Yeah, what do you do in your pastime that nobody else knows about? Right? Something like that. Okay.
Well, Phil, let's make her answer it. Sabrina?
Okay, yeah, there we go. I think she's thinking about
okay.
it. Yeah, it's your show, Sabrina. It's just, I'm just here because my wonderful hobby.
Okay, well, this is not music related. This is more like
That's
if you follow me
our
and
guest,
you would know about it.
You can say what you wish, as long as you don't use George Carlin's 7 words on the air. But okay,
nobody has ever asked me why I feed the squirrels.
Okay.
Because I post so much of it, nobody has ever, they always ask, oh, it's interesting that you feed them, but nobody has asked why did you start to feed them.
I'm just waiting for the moment that a Family Guy makes a scene there. If you've watched Family Guy before, all of a sudden they'll have a caricature of Sabrina Fallahon and a big giant squirrel come out and attack her or something, but
they have jumped on me, but not attacked me.
The only squirrel that I enjoy is Rocky the Flying Squirrel, and Bullwinkle, but moose and squirrel, right? Okay. So that is definitely an interesting thing, squirrels. Anyone else have a unique thing that they would like to share? That, don't worry, it doesn't leave this room until at least the recording goes out. So be very, very careful what you say. Okay, yeah, I think Joan remuted her mic when she said that. She didn't want anything going on. But okay. And anyway, I think we are about to wind down in the next couple minutes. Is there anything that you would like to sort of close with, Sabrina, before we jump to the iRadio USA side for the Girls Night Out edition, which I hope you'll move over there for at least that way. Anybody who may have not heard my show before, it's a condensed, doesn't mean you have to stay for the whole hour, but my recommendation, because I'm not allowed through radio rules to say when Sabrina will be on, but in the immortal words of, don't hold me to it, Kevin Nealon, Mr. Subliminal. But okay, but please tune in before that, because there's great tunes there. Girls Night Out, if you haven't listened, is girl groups, female lead singers, and female solo artists. It's not totally unique. I'm sure some stations are there jumping on the bandwagon, but to me, it's my bread and butter show, because that's where I've had people come on. We've had station IDs from various people like Lydia Cornell from Too Close to the Comfort for the 80s, John Oates from Hall & Oates, Jim Messina, Luggins and Messina, and Martha Davis most recently from the Motels. So I guess I'm a lot of 80s child here, even though I was born in the 60s. But okay, people know I'm way over 50 now, but not 60 yet. Okay, and then it's no plug for any upcoming birthdays, because I'm not 60 for a couple of years still. But and Joan is forever young, and we know, Joan, you're like 20 something, right? But okay, because believe me, it's just the camera, but Joan could easily pass for a wonderful starlet at any time. So you see, now she's blushing, and now
I
I know.
tell people that when they ask how old I am, I tell them I'm 80, so they think I look really good for my age.
I know that. I know. No, not that you're 80, no, but that people will do that all the time. Because it was funny, a former boss of mine, when I celebrate my birthday and stuff, and like people always tell me I look younger, you know, the beard and everything, but I mean, people can't see the gray in it here with this camera. It's not that gray, but in recent years. But I told my boss, I told him what my age was and stuff. He goes, I thought you were older. I'm like, that's the first time anybody said that to me, you know? And he's not my boss anymore. No, I didn't do Donald Trump on your fire. He left for another position. But I always thought that was the most hilarious thing he did in the years that I was with this particular boss. So, okay, I think we are going to wrap things up. As if someone can go over to iRadio USA and see if the show has started. Just don't play me on the air, because then my legalities will kick in. Because one time I was doing a show with my wife, an interview, and I think 8 seconds of The Doors' Love Me 2 Times or some other song played in my Facebook Live. Mind you, 8 seconds, and Warner Brothers had my live stream banned for 18 months. Then they finally released it to realize I didn't play the song. For 8 seconds of, it wasn't Light My Fire, but it was like that, but it was a show on Badfinger of all things, so it had nothing to do with the Doors, but it was playing in the background, and it got on air. But that's how good their bots are. For 8 seconds, 18 months, I wasn't banned, but that show, they just like blacked it out. So they're powerful there, and I'm sure ASCAP is waiting in the wings to go, your license. But I would have had a sing-along here, but I found out that there's only 2 songs, rock songs, that are public domain, and one of them is only in Canada, I think, and in Europe, is the Beatles' Love Me Do for some reason. That song, out of all the entire Beatles catalog, is public domain, but not in the United States, because of, I guess, the way the royalties at that time were structured or something. So that's still public domain in various countries. And the original version, 1957, of Rockin' Robin, which Michael Jackson later covered, that original version, if you play it, it's public domain. But anyways, I'm going to wrap things up. I'd like to thank our wonderful guest, Sabrina Fallahon, to all of you who joined us and participated. I didn't see anybody in the chat, but if I missed it, please let me know later, and you can, say, And I would also like to thank my friend and special ultimate super lady, Joan Esposito, for joining us. And Joan, I definitely say, don't let anybody else ring you about not keeping any promises, because you are the real deal. And to me, this is maybe not a bucket list moment. That's only when we get to finally see each other in person somewhere when this pandemic is over. But it's an awful close second, because having you on with our show here for an hour, because obviously the thing that I would say, if I were to be on your show, at least at this stage in my fine radio career, your wonderful listeners would say, like Bart Simpson, like, I'm Bart Simpson, who the hell are you? But, hey, okay. And anyway, we're going to wrap things up. Thank you to one and all. And hopefully this
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Facebook Live, or we can make it a watch party later.
You're welcome.
And everybody, thank you all for joining us. And I'm going to end the recording here and the video. If not, so please don't swear in the interim if I don't do this right. So.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Sabrina. Thanks, guys. Good night.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.